Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Cloud Foundry. Y'all missed it, but Nick was making me nervous again. Shows up, disappears, doesn't come back into the last 5 seconds before we get in.
Well, let me see if this works. This is what I was doing. Yeah. All right, my lights are working. So we had like I have some power outages yesterday, and then I discovered that my lights were no longer working after such things, so I had to do some emergency daisy chaining of power supplies. So that's why I ran off camera and then got disconnected because all my stuff dropped for a second. But I'm here.
That's right, folks. Yeah. That's how we do this. We do this professionally. We set up minutes ahead of time.
Yeah, or seconds, or while the live counter's going down. And anyway, I guess this is just what happens when you do things live every week.
Yep. Well, I was thinking about this earlier when I had I was going to some phone call. No, what was I? Anyways, I had 5 minutes before I had to do something important, and I was I was recording a podcast last night, and I was at the grocery store, and it was like let's say 5:54, and I had to record at 6, and I thought, like, I don't know, I can get back home in 3 minutes, and then I just need to sit down in the chair. But that's why you do all this work, so that you can just, like, get a bottle of wine at the store before your podcast, because you need it later for the soccer game, and then it's fine, and it worked out just like today. Well trained.
Yeah. No,
I wouldn't have said anything. Nobody would have known. But
yeah, was that the Software Defined Talk podcast that you were referencing?
That's right.
Yes. Yeah. I've been meaning to give you a shout out for that. I've been listening to that recently, so. If you're listening for another good podcast, Cote runs that with, I guess, I don't know your other co-hosts' names by heart, but
Brandon and Matt.
There we go. Yeah, I should have known that, but
that's okay.
It's a good show.
Well, we enjoy doing it.
Well, we got the newsletter. You can always go out and read the newsletter. I read that every time it comes out, so that's always fun. Full of information. Great information comes out as that as well. I love reading your stuff, Cote.
Well, that's nice of you to say. I appreciate it. It's always nice to get a compliment.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're here for.
That's right.
And
about Foundry Weekly, not only do we tell you about past, but we make you feel better about yourself too.
We're here to just help our guest stars feel great about themselves, right? Yeah. But I guess if you haven't picked that up, Cote is our guest this week. And I think I titled this like a Tanzu Talk crossover to Cloud Foundry Weekly. So we also have the Tanzu Talk podcast series, and Cote kind of runs that, and every now and then we'll have you'll provide some insights with a either customer or another fellow Tanzu employee, and
that's right.
Cote has his analysis and things of that. So that's kind of, maybe we wanted to get some of that talk here and just kind of cross the communities, cross streams.
Of course,
kind of go from here.
Yes. Well, what's in the Venn diagram? The last I come into y'all's show every now and then, and I watch some things.
Mm-hmm.
That was oddly phrased, but the most memorable episode recently, I saw the live stream that you had from Cloud Foundry Day in New York, and
yes.
just as you were saying, I mean, I like to do this a lot in the Tanzu Talk stuff and other things. This is always great to get a customer talking, and on a panel, and so that was enjoyable. But many other topics as well. I think it'd be cool to have even more customers on. Maybe at the upcoming Cloud Foundry Day somewhere in Germany.
Yes,
we could do another live stream.
Carlsberg, I think, is the city. I'm not 100% if that's pronouncing that
sure.
right.
You can just put in for it. We're hoping to get there. We'll wait and see if we can make it, but we're hoping to get there, because I agree with you, man. Having the customers on that we had during the Cloud Foundry New York, that was awesome. And we've put the request out there. We've got other customers, and again, I'm going to put it out there. If you're a customer and you want to talk about something that you're doing great with Cloud Foundry, let us know. We'll bring you on, because I agree. Customer talks are always number one in my eyes.
Or even if you're a fellow Tanzu employee and have a topic that you want to bring up on the show, we would like that as well. So yes, I guess. And then recording that the Cloud Foundry Day Europe, or it's going to be in Germany in October. So the CFPs for that are still open until, I believe, this Sunday. Let me double check the calendar here. So let's see. Yeah.
And I'll post links out there, but I believe you're right. I believe it is Sunday.
Yeah, the 14th of July, which is Sunday here. But yeah, if you're interested in going there and have a talk, you should submit your CFP, and if not, you should definitely go. Right, last year in Heidelberg was it was pretty crazy. Cote, you were there, I was there.
Yeah,
a very packed, warm room, but it all worked out, and yeah, so hopefully we can all go there again this year and meet up with real world Cloud Foundry users. We have some talks hoping to get accepted, so hopefully we can go there this year again. But looking forward. Even if we're not there, you should still go, because there's going to be awesome people from the community and everyone there. So yeah, go either way. But hopefully we can see y'all there in Germany this year.
And Cote, I see that you're wearing half the uniform. You got the beard, you got the gray, but a little bit
too much hair.
Too much hair.
I would say that's a benefit, a feature ad. Like
hey, what we can't have, I will make fun of. Right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, I've been trying very hard to lose it, but it just keeps sticking. I don't know. you cut it, it grows back. It's difficult. It's a burden.
We're talking about, we've got Explore coming up in August. You got anything going on for Explore, Cote?
I don't. I was helping write the MC script for the Spring 1 part. We've got Spring 1 online, which is free to attend, thankfully, because it's online. And then there's also like a in-person Spring 1 as well. And so I think there's about I don't know. Well, it's longer than 45 minutes, but there's, you got to have an MC to introduce things, tell people. Right. So that's really all my involvement. I'm not going to be there, but there's also the Barcelona one in November, which hopefully I'll be there.
Well, we're hoping to, we were hoping to get a Cloud Foundry episode going on at Explorer. I don't think that's going to happen. We'll probably do an unofficial one. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah,
we're not going to be on stage, but we'll do an unofficial one.
Yeah, I don't. The getting a breakout session dedicated for it is something a little tough, but I think we can definitely have one from somewhere in the Venetian Hotel in Vegas. I'm sure we can find a corner somewhere, maybe take over the Tanzu booth for a bit and do.
I think last year they had like the community stage where there's that VMware podcast where a guy wears a big cowboy hat. And they recorded a lot of stuff there. I don't know if they've got another big hat podcast stage.
Yeah, the virtually speaking crew. They have
there you go.
All the gear. So yeah, maybe we can look into that too, and see what it would take to get a little spot at the community center or whatever we call it this year, the hub, or I don't know.
Well, and I'm still hoping that we get to be able to do that, CF memories montage that we talked about at Cloud Foundry Day and weren't able to get to. Maybe we can get that done at Explore.
Sure. And I guess another plug, if you're going to be at Explore in Las Vegas and want to talk to us, we'll be there. So
that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So there's like some studies and things, Cote.
Oh, I like studies and surveys, analysis.
Yes. Yeah. This seems to be your niche, I guess, or like your expertise, right? So I know there's been this like cloud native platform. I'm butchering the name of the survey. State of Cloud Native, perhaps.
State of Cloud Native Platforms, 2024.
Yes. Yeah. Can you? Would you care to give us a little synopsis? Your Cote's take?
We just and by we I mean us. VMware Tanzu by Broadcom or whatnot, the Tanzu world. So we've done a state of Kubernetes survey for 6 years. Whenever there's a survey like this, I always suggest to people just ignore the first year, kind of like the first pancake. People say it always comes out wrong, but it seems fine to me. But the first pancake you throw out. But we've done 7 years, I think, of these surveys, but 6 that you would count, and they were called State of Kubernetes. And this year, we changed it to State of Cloud Native Platforms to be more general, and also because I think just platforms is what people are interested in, regardless of what's running inside of them, here, there, or wherever. And so I mean, basically what we ask is the standard things you would ask in surveys, like what are the benefits you've been having with platforms? What are the hurdles, the friction that you have? And over the past couple of years, we started, and by we, I don't really have any involvement in the survey other than talking about it. So I'm just saying we in the corporate citizen type of way.
Sure.
And so I'll go back to that. So we started asking kind of like what the I guess depending on where you are in the stack of software, what the outcomes are or the business benefits, right? Like not just like the technical benefits or even being able to release frequently or patch stuff. And this year, the kind of business benefit stuff was pretty good. It's kind of inching up, and so that's like every now and then we don't always publish this, but we also ask like which platforms people are using, which is kind of fun to see. It's fun to see all the raw data for the report. But I think the thing this year that I thought was most interesting for me, I mean, there's a couple of things, is we actually, I guess we've always gathered this, but we actually broke down some cuts or slices or demographics type of stuff. So, for example, this is not exactly what I just said, but one of the questions we asked was like, so, like, what are the concerns that you have with platforms, the things that you need to address? And then we sliced it up by like company size. And we also sliced it up by like, interestingly, like the number of different platforms you run in your organization to see like how those things change or not. Right. And I think the second one I thought was interesting because so basically, you would ask the survey respondent like how many platforms they have running. Obviously Cloud Foundry is a platform. You can build a platform on top of Kubernetes, et cetera, so forth and so on. And so we would ask them like how many distinct platforms that you're running, and then we slice that up into 1, 2, 3, and then 4 or more, 4 plus. And what you see that's interesting in this chart. So obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but if you read a lot of surveys, I bet you two can guess what the number one concern and priority for any type of computational resource used in an organization ever is. Security. It's always security. In fact, I would say whenever you go to an organization and you ask them what they're worried about, just throw away security like that first pancake. I'm going to see how long I can ride that analogy, because it's just like, of course it's security. That's not interesting. Right?
Yeah.
But what was interesting, so security is on there, and kind of like things like operational efficiency. I think there's like 10 or 15 things. But what's interesting when you slice it by number of platforms is that as the number of platforms you use grow, let's say the magnitude of those problems grow, right? So like, I should bring up these charts so I know the numbers, but like if you look at security concerns, it's like, it's at like N if you have one platform. And then if you're running like 4 plus platforms, it's at like, N plus 5, right? So those magnitude of concerns go up with the more platforms you have, the more inconsistency, so to speak, that you have running out there. So, that's what I like to do with these surveys over time is like, I know security is a major concern. Got it. Right. Like there's kind of like those sort of things, but it's interesting to like look at the results and try to interpret what that means tactically, not tactfully, but like tactically for organizations running. So for example, with that, you would say like, so if my goal with the platform is to kind of like centralize and standardize how I do things, I should probably not have 4 of them. Like the fewer that I have, the better it would be. And you can kind of see that jump out at you in the charts, or maybe meander out of the charts.
Well, and is there anything in the survey kind of going in? Because I've always found that, there's a platform, right? There's shelfware type platforms that you bring in, you kind of out of the box. But then there's also this concept of platform as a product where you take some of these things, you make them your own. And I seem to, most of the customers that I work with, when you take a platform and you make it a product for your company, you name it, you make it something that's, for the company, you tend to have more success. Is anything like that coming out of the survey?
Yeah, let me think. I think most of the questions in that area are around how are you helping developers out, and like what the developers achieve. And there's a few, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think there are a few questions about what type of services do you provide in your platform. And I might be mixing with other surveys I looked at recently, but there's some other interesting questions. I don't know if we published this part, but about like what workloads are you running with this? So like what type of application and what types of services? And I think, and again, I might be mixing to another survey, but whatever. It's all the big soup of surveys. But what was interesting there to look at with like platforms is that a lot of like microservices comes up a lot as like the type of thing that you're supporting, which like I haven't really, I don't know if this is a professionally irresponsible state to be in, but I haven't really paid attention to microservices for a while. That seems like that was a thing and now it's normal or whatever. So I haven't really checked in on it, but like it does, like when and I think this was in our survey, but when I saw that result, it was making me think like, oh, right. Like microservices is the way people do things. And, you know, I might hang out with all these like conference people and they like to make fun of stuff all the time, no matter what it is. So like, you know, microservices gets kind of a weird vibe every now and then. But I think if you look at actual survey results, like that's the way people architect things. It's the aspiration that they have. So that was a long answer to saying not exactly what you were asking about. But like that would be an interesting thing to ask in a survey is how is to try to triangulate on how much customization is good versus troublesome, right? Like the more, how far should you go to customize what is in a platform for the kind of like the developer base that you have?
Well, and I don't even know if it's really customization, right? I think it's more about putting a little skin in the game, giving developers and platform engineers a feeling of this is mine, rather than just a software that I run. You know, and customization is a part of that, but I don't think that, you know, jumping into a, you know, shrink wrap software or a pre-made platform and just customizing the hell out of it is really what we're talking, at least in my opinion, not what we're talking about here.
Right.
But how do you make it something that the company, you know, they've got skin in the game? This is ours. It's not, I'm not running something from VMware. I'm not running something from, you know, Red Hat. This is something that we're putting together. It's ours.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, it's more of the like, let's take something like Cloud Foundry or like, you know, Tanzu platform and then build our own integrations with our own other systems together to make it all work together. So like maybe it's like a ServiceNow integration with your traditional like ITM. There's an acronym for that. Yeah.
Or TSM.
Yeah. Ticketing management software. Like, so you're like, hey, I can go and like teams can request access through that and get an org and a space created on the fly. And like, that's all approved via security. Or a similar story with, you know, granting access to maybe a isolation segment that has higher network, you know, higher controls because it's maybe a regulated zone, like a, you know, PHI or PCI type of data type of concern. Same things like that, or integrating with some of your logging infrastructure. So having that kind of be that complete story. I've seen a couple of some good presentations throughout the years where I think the most successful platform teams have done that customization where like, all right, we take the platform. Now we need to make it really easy to onboard. Like if there's a, you know, a roadblock there, like we need to build some automation within our existing tools. Cause we can't, like no platform can come in and just replace all enterprise's entire estate of things, right? You gotta quilt the things and tie the things together just because, you know, a lot of these companies have been around for many decades and they have, you know, decades of technology to integrate with type of thing. So maybe that's where we're talking about customization. I think the line of problems happen when they start taking the thing and then trying to change the core of the thing versus just trying to make it work with all the other things, I guess.
Yeah, and you know there is, you know, back to that 4 or more platforms causes, you know, 4 or more extra problems for you. like sort of thing. There are questions in there about like difficulties of like integrating with your existing data sources and repositories, or like having an inconsistent developer experience, right? And though like things that are getting to that point of like how do we make it work in our organization, integrating it with things, and also like working in the way that our developers want to, right? And as you would expect, if you have a lot of different platforms, you got a lot of different work to I think the word might be harmonize or make all of that stuff seem the same. And so I think that like, I'm going back to this chart, but I think that question is fun because it gets to this point of like, you should not have a lot of platforms. That's like the point. The more you have, the less platformy you are.
Well, and it's weird because we were having this conversation for a talk that we're planning on doing for Explore, but how to give, we call it the public cloud experience on-prem, right? And it really kind of started breaking down to there was a difference between, what you could do on a public cloud versus a platform. And we had to make that distinction to say, okay, we're not really talking about, DIY. We're not really talking about self-service. We're talking about the benefits of a platform, no matter where it sits. And being this is Cloud Foundry Weekly, right? That's something I want to bring up is, when we look at Cloud Foundry itself, we look at the commercial side with Taz, the fact that it can run anywhere, you have that consistent experience regardless of where you're running. It's just feels the same, looks the same, acts the same. If you start multiplying that out and say, okay, well, we've got a platform for this, a platform from that, I'm actually surprised that the numbers are linear. I would think they would start being exponential when you have multiple platforms about the problems that they cause you.
Yeah. That definitely. I'll have to go back and look at it if they're exponential or not. I was never good at math, but they do go up. They go up a distressing amount, to be literary about it. And I mean that it is. That's the other thing. It's interesting, like for y'all and the people you talk with in the Cloud Foundry world to reflect on is like, you talk with people who have a lot of different like middleware and platform and all this stacks, right? And they're always saying they spend a lot of their time on just like maintenance and upkeep and things like that. And it seems like, again, if you have a lot of different platforms, then of course, because you always have maintenance and upkeep, and now you have it like times 4 or more or whatever, right? And like that seems to be this is a quandary that I try to figure out how to articulate over the years. Is like it's hard to explain to people who are not technical that that's a bad idea and you should not do it, right? Because it's kind of like that's how you end up with all of this, like, let's call it infrastructure debt, right? Where like you just spend 80, 60, 70% of your time, like just keeping the lights on. And I feel like the people who are running this stuff, they knew that would happen, but like management didn't care. I don't know. I don't know how to express that kind of the thing. Like the analogy as the last thing I always have in my head is like, I feel like if you were, a CEO or even on the board of a manufacturing company and you went to the factory and like, there was water all over the floor and like the robots were all rusty, you'd probably be like, I think there's a problem here. But like that doesn't seem to happen when you walk around the IT cubicles in big organizations.
Well, and I think, Foundry puts in this question, which, highlights what we're saying perfectly. What percentage of enterprises are meeting those 15 to 30 days SLAs for remediation of critical CVEs? You can't meet that efficiently without a platform, in my opinion. I'm going to make a bold statement and say I just don't think it's possible to do that at scale without a good platform. Now, multiply that out. We've got 2 or 3 different platforms that we're running, and each process to remediate is different. You're going to expand that time. And I think that fits in pretty well with what we're saying here. In my opinion.
And I guess just to tag on the remediation process, there was an SSH CVE that came out recently, and I was just on a customer call, actually the Tanzu Vanguard call right before this, and that's why I'm always a little late to join because I've got a sort of a show right before this, but that a CVE came up and like, have we, has this been patched? in the stem cell, right? And like, oh yeah, it's been patched. And then we had another customer like, oh yeah, we rolled it out. It's fixed. So like having that whole like platform automation experience and having, something like Bosch being able to pick up a patch to a CV and just, distribute that across your environment, I think is a great example to help tackle the first pancake of the security concern in platforms. So I don't know. I kind of went off the train with that, but I thought it was good to call out in terms of if you are running a Cloud Foundry based platform, you can really take care of that problem pretty easily.
Accelerate your remediation of exposure. And for those that don't know about the SSH, go back and watch episode 15, Tales with DMZ. Right, we talk all about that particular CVE that came out. He gives us some information on it. But, the fact that was patched. Log4j, same thing. Log4j caused a lot of disruption across the tech industry. And, the companies that were running a platform were able to remediate those within days, where it took some literally months to get Log4j patched out. Never like that. And so going back on the survey, so I remember reading somewhere, Cote, that, the big thing is, with all this OSS software out there, we can just make our own platforms. We'll DIY this. But I remember seeing there's a number out there, something, it was like 60 or 70% of companies that try to do custom platforms, DIY platforms, after like 6 or 8 months, they're only showing like 100 applications on this thing. Kind of proves that it's not easy, right? Building your own platform is not as easy as you might think it is.
Right. And that was written up by our coworkers Rita and Cami before the final version of the survey was put out. So you can see a close reader of the PDF of the final survey, and this article will see that the color schemes are much different. So you can see the sausage being made in the background. But yeah, there's questions there that like let's see. Like it takes like a year after first it kind of takes around like a year or so for a lot of people to get a platform built so that it can be ready. And then then it also takes like to get like more than 100 apps, like only about like 36% of people after 6 months get like more than 100 apps on there, if I remember the wording correctly, right? And so, I think there and then there's another thing which I don't think we put this in the final results, but I have it. This is something that's fun to do when you're writing blogs about these surveys, is you kind of sneak sounds too nefarious, but you make new charts of stuff that's not in there yet so that you can publish them. And one of them is going over, one interesting thing is that the larger the company, the more likely you are to buy your platform, whether that means using it from a service or using something like, the Tanzu platform. And I think that's probably because in a large company, I mean, there's a couple of things. One, you also see that the people, despite what I was just saying about rusty factories, but once someone gets around to this, there's an understanding in a larger company that like we've got more important things to do than like build a platform.
Right.
And, and as we, and I'm sure lots of the people watching know, in a large company, there's always people building their own stuff. But it's sort of like, what is the official thing to be doing? And you see when you slice various questions in the survey that, like I was saying, the larger the company, the more likely they are to buy their platform. And then also what you see in, there's another question that we ask that's about what do you find worth paying for? What do you think you should pay for functionality wise? And what's interesting to the point of build versus buy there is we slice that one up by decision maker, right? So management, people who would obviously decide things, and just not sort of like in a diminishing way, but individuals. And what you see is that individuals, by, I don't know, let's say 10 or 15% difference, they generally don't think as many things are worth paying for as management. And so you kind of see that sophistication. You kind of see that like the higher up in the decision process you are, the more likely you are to think like, it's probably worth paying for this. Like, I don't mind paying for, better security. I don't mind paying for this sort of thing. So I think what all of that amounts to, right, is that there is an understanding that it's worth paying for this stuff out there. But as you get towards more and more, almost in a non-judgmental way, lower in the organization, there's sort of like the desire to build things versus buy them, essentially.
Do you think that has to do with this mentality of, proving my worth, right? If I'm not working hard, if I'm not building something, then I'm not valuable. Do you think that there might be a little bit of that mindset in there?
Yeah, I think there's a big like stew of things with it, and I think they're all. I think they're all aspects of. If you hire someone to build stuff, they're going to want to build stuff,
right?
And so and as you're saying, one way that manifests itself is like I was hired to build stuff, and so if I just buy something, I'm not building it. Now I'm just like, at best, I'm like assembling the IKEA drawer system. That seems like pretty significant building, though, right? But like, or you're just doing that one final touch of like, I'm going to put those little plastic screw hole covers in, and now I'm done, right? Yeah. And so there is that aspect of, as we would say in the DevOps world, of like kind of like heroic and hero anti-patterns, where like the amount of effort and activity that you put something into something is the way you're judged to be worthy or not, rather than on the other end, to try not to use the silly word outcome, being judged on the effectiveness or the success of whatever you're responsible for, right? So like, it doesn't matter if you built it or not. Like, can Cote change his seats on his flight on Finnair next week on his mobile app in a reasonable amount of time without it going down, right? Like, and the ops person should be happy if the answer is yes, versus then like, oh, I built a platform.
Yep. But I think that's, I guess, I don't know. I kind of seen it firsthand, is that it's maybe more of the discipline too of, you want to try to like, do you want to like, it may not be as exciting to focus on the business logic versus then I'm going to build this cool platform thing that's going to help build my resume, right? And so there's always like the balances of that versus, and like how that trickles down through the management style of like, hey, we should focus on building what our business does, like maybe that flight booking software versus we dedicated dozens of engineers to build a platform that we could have just purchased for probably less. I don't know. I think
it's true. It's true.
And it's more, that's, I guess that's I don't know, like a technology wide, I guess, dilemma of like, you could probably have that, would that be platform or infrastructure, or, I guess people get excited about some of the
application development, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think Cote nailed it, right? There's that hero anti-pattern there.
Yeah.
I built something. I'm the only one that knows it, right? There's some security in there that if I leave, who else is going to take care of this? And it is an anti-pattern, and it's a very bad one to get into. I often try to tell people my job was to come in and push a button and then not have to do anything for the rest of the day. I'll work my ass off to get to that point. But my end goal was to everything run smoothly. But a lot of people, they build their worth based on the fact that, hey, if something goes wrong, I'm the only one that can fix it.
Well, and I think too, in terms of like the hero or anti-hero, like sometimes, like I've seen this firsthand too, where like coming into an incident, like we called it like a war room type of thing, like when something broke, you coming in and saving the day, you get a lot of props, but maybe it was also your job to make sure the thing didn't happen in the first place.
Right.
But because you came in and saved the day and fixed it, everyone's happy, but like, maybe you could have prevented that from happening, or like maybe you should focus, that balance of how do we balance, fixing the debt before the things break versus just breaking, like always firefighting, so to speak.
Yeah. And I like on that point, like, a lot. This is an eternal problem. You should ask your Vanguard friends about this. I think I had a little talk with them. Not talk as a parental talking to a kid, but I had a discussion with them 3 years ago about like metrics that they use for things, right? And I think the problem there is that it's, I don't know if it's hard, but it appears to be hard to come up with, what would you call that type of thing you were describing, Nick? Success metrics, right? Like metrics that are based on nothing broke, so you get 110% of your bonus, right? Like it's definitely worth rewarding people when they fix things. That's nice, but like also just saying that we're able to support, I don't know, 2,000 applications and they worked, like, you know, there wasn't that much downtime for them. Like it's hard to track that kind of thing. And I don't know, like things like the Dora metrics and other things try to come up with a way of doing that, but I don't feel like it's very consistently used and applied, which is unfortunate.
But I think too, I guess coming on my point too, that I wasn't necessarily, trying to call out people that fix things, but it's almost like
sure.
The things that don't break don't get any attention. It's just like, take it for granted. Like the power company, like I flip the switch and the light goes on and yay. Like, but nobody talks about how great, power is.
Right. It's the what have you done for me lately problem. That people encounter. And I was thinking I should also add all of that said, I'm always like I'm always interested in the pragmatic, if cynical, view of getting through life in an organization. And to some extent, you also have to read the room and be like, well, what do people care about? So that's what I'm going to do. Or at least even if you want to try to be a hero in a hero culture, so to speak, a good hero, you can at least make sure you report on fixing things and kind of highlight how you're doing that stuff, even as you're trying to keep things up and running. Like I was reading one of your old articles, Nick, where you talk about your experience and you're like, oh yeah, I and some other ops people, like we supported, I don't know, however many applications and developers. Right. And like, that's a good, like, those are good things to have credit for, but they can be difficult. Like, I don't know if that like shows up on the quarterly dashboard.
But it's, yeah.
But it is definitely like, I mean, speaking of resume building, right? Like that kind of thing stands out on a resume equally as well as I've got all the hot technologies, right? That like, oh yeah, I supported all of these applications for like 5 years, and there's 3 zeros after this number. And so like, it shows you've done real work.
Well, and it's interesting, what we were just talking about is something we've talked about on this show quite a bit, is it's the squeaky wheel that gets the noise. And there was this perception that Taz and Cloud Foundry were going away because nobody ever complained about it. Nobody ever said, well, it just worked. But when you really start digging in and going back to your Dora metrics, statement, there's telemetry out there. You get in and you start looking. These platforms enable, 70, 80,000 pushes in production in a month. Where else can you do that? Right. The Dora metrics, I agree with you. They're not getting, I guess, pushed up, or they're not consistent enough to be a worthwhile value, but there's good information in there. And I think, Dobbs on the chat, he puts out there, with budgets being tight, I think companies are falling for the false promise of cheaper public cloud. And I kind of agree with him on that. But you still have to have that platform, right? There's this idea, well, we'll just go to the cloud. It'll make everything better. But if you don't go into the cloud with a plan, you don't go to the public cloud with an idea or a platform to manage things, you're just going to get yourself in an even worse situation, because, your developers are going to do stuff. They're going to go out there, they're going to spin up these VMs. And I can tell a story about a customer that came back and he saw this VM running that was, like 200, terabytes of memory. It was this huge VM that was costing them just a BOCO money, but nobody knew it was out there because they didn't have a plan when they went to the cloud. And these are one of the things where platforms really kind of help you out with that. Doesn't mean that there's not work, but you got to be prepared for it.
Yeah. And I guess another just strange plug while we're talking about that cloud, just want to reiterate that Cloud Foundry is a multi-cloud that you can deploy everywhere. Every now and then I get pulled in like, well, can we run this on so and so? Like, yes, like yes, you can. Like this has been out there for like many years now. So yeah, and then we have I know there are many Cloud Foundry users and Tanzu customers who run it, like a hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, what are you going to call it? Like on premises in a public cloud provider of choice, or your mix and match your favorite providers of choice, right?
Always love those statements. Can you show me an architecture for running TAS on Azure or running TAS on GCP? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same architecture, right? It's just kind of the naming of things that change. There's no difference. Well, what does that mean to my developers? Nothing. It means nothing. They won't even know where it's running. They don't care, right?
Yeah, it's power of a great platform to help control those cloud costs too.
Yeah, going back to the old haiku, I don't care. Just run it for me, right? Mm-hmm. Developers shouldn't even know. They shouldn't have any inclination of where they're running it, in my opinion. Just that it runs every time they put the button.
All right, we have some more comments here we're behind on. Thanks for the chat today, everyone. Finds he's back here. Oh, that's an interesting topic. I don't know. Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of, like, we'll call it DIY platforms, and maybe not necessarily fail, but maybe, let's just say, be way more expensive than originally planned. So I don't know if anyone's going to come out and say, hey, we hired 100 engineers to build a platform.
There's got to be a variation of this question in the survey, Cote.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one way of, I'll have to think about if in the raw data, but you're asking about when we talk about building platforms and how long it takes to get that initial app on there, right? I mean, that's almost the happy answer to this question that you're at least getting apps on it, right? And it is like, I mean, there is, if looking at the survey again, like there's the expectation that it probably is going to take you like a year or so to build a platform to the point where you can start deploying things on it, right? And what the survey doesn't ask, I mean, again, this would be a fun thing to ask, is what is like the budget for the platforms that you're running, right? Because that's what would be interesting, is like, and then what is the budget for building the platform and running it? It would be interesting to see, because I think as the question is getting to, right, like once you build your own platform, you have two options. You can either like never change it and then it's cheap, but then also it's static and not very functional, or you can keep funding the people who are changing it, which now you've got a whole other group of people to pay for. And I think anecdotally, I haven't talked with people like this in a while, but over the years, obviously because they were interested in talking with us at Pivotal or Tanzu or whatever. But I've talked with several people who like would spend a year or so building out their own platforms. And like, I mean, the way you do the basic costing is they don't even take into account lost time and opportunity costs. But you go look up at whatever region they're in, you figure that you need probably 10 people to build a platform over a year. And then you where do people look this stuff? Indeed.com. You look up the salary ranges and you just multiply that out. And then that's sort of like your annual budget at the very least. But I think the important thing that the survey doesn't capture, to use a funny phrasing, is how good, and how good sounds bad, how much effort are you going to be willing to put into continually evolving this, right? Like, it's like, whether it's like having the ability to deploy your security stuff like you were talking about earlier, or just like, now we need AI, so put that in there, right? Like, you've got to really own that entire platform. So I think now on the positive side, like I was saying, when you slice by industry type, it's the people who build platforms the most on their own, and maybe this is because of actual strategic need or just that kind of hubris we were talking about earlier, are like software and tech companies. They love building stuff on their own because, again, it's kind of what they do. But I do often wonder, like, do they really need to build their own platforms? But maybe if you're like a super high scale SaaS, I don't know. It depends. But they're the ones who build their platforms the most.
Well, and to reiterate on kind of Feinzie's question there, I wonder how much a budget goes in that's kind of that tunnel mentality, right? It'll cost you $100 for me to dig this tunnel for you. Well, I get halfway through the tunnel and I've already went through my $100. Well, I've already went halfway through the tunnel, so now I still got to pay for it, right? I'm not just going to abandon the tunnel, right? So I think we get that same mentality when we start talking about DIY platforms. Is a company comes in, they want to build it, they get started, it goes over budget, but they're too far in to really throw away their work and look at it in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you were bringing up a point about people asking about, what's up with the Tanzu application service or Cloud Foundry or PCF or whatever. And there's kind of like this curse of success, I guess. And I've been like looking out at the platform engineering world for now a couple of years. And it seems like there's a lot of like relearning and rebuilding of things. And the thing that the more abstract quandary that it sticks in my mind is like how does like an overall community make sure I want to use the word relevant, but how do you make sure that you like keep maintaining and growing like the platform, metaphorically speaking? It's confusing since we're talking about platforms, but like the core base that you have so that people don't like forget about it and go off and build their own thing, right? Like in comparison, or not in comparison, but like for example, you could like look at, I don't know, maybe Linux. Like, I think that works. and yet like, it's not like the kind of like happily running thing. Like it's a very like active, vibrant thing that there's all sorts of people involved in. So like, that's always a quandary with like successful kind of like infrastructure things, is how the community can make sure that everyone is working on improving and evolving it instead of like running off and doing their own thing.
So you hit on something that's kind of a pet peeve of mine, and you framed it perfectly. What we see with PCF is, hey, we want to run on containers. Well, PCF runs on containers. Yeah, but not the containers I want them to run on, right? Well, it's an open source product. Rather than the community jumping in there and helping make the product do something different and do something more, people decide just to abandon it and go out and build their own thing. And, I'm going to say something that's probably going to get me in a lot of trouble here, but it's very funny to watch some of these new things come out and say, look at all these great features that I've done. Yeah, we were doing those 7 years ago. Congratulations. We're still doing them today. And I think that's one of the things that we miss is this is an open source product. There's a commercial side to it, but if there's changes, you can make those changes probably relatively easy on a platform that's been around for a decade, rather than trying to go out and reinvent the wheel.
Yeah,
rant over.
That's I mean, you're bringing up one thing that like an adjacent sort of like theory I have running in my mind is that in the infrastructure space, and what I mean by that is like cloud platform stuff and also application development stuff. That's the term of art, stuff. But like, frameworks and like
highly technical.
The runtime environments, the way you package things and like all that stuff, that like keeping things lively requires like an open source community, right? Like if you have these things, I'm sure there's examples of them, especially in the AI space nowadays, and maybe previous to that, and kind of like the whatever was between big data and AI, just data analysis. But like in general, it's hard to be in that infrastructure space if you're based on completely closed source stuff. Like you need kind of open community around it if you're doing something new. And so like that seems to be the other attribute, is like if you have a community, you need to have like the magnitude, the quantity doesn't necessarily matter, but you need a thriving open source community around it to address exactly what you're saying, is that like anyone can come and evolve this and add to it. It's not like the answer is always no, or it's not like there's not even someone to ask, right? Like you can get involved and evolve and kind of like move things around, move things forward.
Well, I like the Linux analogy, and James Waters brought this specific thing up on a call earlier today, internal call, but also talking about like Postgres. Like Postgres has been around for a while, right? Linux has been around for a while. Cloud Foundry has been around for a while. There's been a lot of core tech that's around for a while that everyone uses, and like like databases have been gone through many iterations of like you had like the NoSQLs and like all like Postgres has been there and has seen like these things kind of come and go or stick around, but then that community that those folks have continued to add, and then now you have things like PG Vector, which is doing AI embeddings on top of it and making it still a very relevant data solution for people, but you don't have to do the whole recreate the wheel of creating a whole database stack or learning that. Postgres has been around for a while. You got tons of people who know it from the operational and development side. Just kind of like I guess maybe a pinnacle example of some of the open source tech, and maybe even Linux too as well. Just those great examples of just really kind of taken for granted, but that's still yet very, very much innovating and being relevant for many things, I guess.
Yeah, Postgres, that would be interesting. I don't know enough about the history of that, but like as the sense I've been getting over the past couple of years is that it like I'm going to intentionally sound dopey here, is that it like does a lot of stuff and it's very important, but it's not like there's like tons of Postgres conversation out there, right? So it's like it's another good example of just like the maybe one of the worst metrics is continual success, just because like you don't as unfortunately or fortunately, as my dad used to say, you don't get points for just doing your job. Like it's it's sort of an issue with these things.
I think we could have a whole talk around that the continued success, I guess problem, or some kind of dynamics of navigating a project with continued success. So yeah, it's an interesting concept to bring up. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure you could phrase that better than what I just attempted to phrase it, Cote. But
well, maybe as in so many large organization things, unfortunately, just the way the cultures are built, you need a crisis, and in an instance of the way to use my dad's wisdom, the way that you get points for just doing your job is when everyone else is not doing their job. And so you can have like a relative, like when other things are not working, you can be like, that one works and it's always worked. And then you're sort of like, you got the what is it? The glass of ice water in a hot place situation where like, you're sort of pointing out the deliciousness of a glass of ice water relative to all this other stuff that's not going well.
Oh, like the hey, this platform hasn't had an outage for 3 or 5 years, but everything else goes down every 2 weeks, type of thing. Perhaps, who knows? Yeah.
Well, and technology is full of trends and fads, just like everything else. And we see new things come up. You look at the cloud native landscape. There's thousands of projects out there. Some will last, some won't. But Dobbs kind of summed it up pretty good here. It's interesting to see what was old become new again, and I think we're starting to see that again. Within this space, people are starting to realize, hey, it just works. But going back to Cote's original statement, it needs an open community. It needs a community that really digs in instead of, just passing out and saying, well, this doesn't work with it, I'm done. Jump in and contribute, make it work.
The old time is a flat circle analogy.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. All right, here. Let's see. We are coming up on 55 minutes. We got a very good live count right now. So thanks for watching, everyone. Cote, do you wanna? I don't know. Like, do you have any other things we want to talk about? I know we talked about like Dungeons and Dragons and AI last time.
That was a while ago. Yeah.
Are you still doing? Are you still on that quest, or have you,
so to speak?
Have you given that up?
Well, I've gotten in and out of giving up on it, and so the premise was, you got this was a year ago now, I think, right? Yeah, that I started doing this is, it should know how to be a dungeon master to kind of run a D&D campaign, like for what everyone shows this Chat GPT stuff does, or Gemini or whatever. It should be easy peasy for it. And in the first week or so of doing this, it actually was pretty good. And then I kept trying it for a month here and there. I don't really have like a tremendous amount of time for sitting around and doing this. But at some point, I think something must have happened. What is this? This is July. Sometime around like February, I think they made all the chat things a little dumber. Something happened because it stopped being so effective. And, you would ask it to come up with adventures, and it would just talk about like, there's some eerie lights in the forest. Like it was very normal. And I figure since these things are built off basically of Reddit, right? That like they talk about D&D all the time in there, so it should be very creative. But and so I gave up on it a while. But then I realized like maybe I have too high of expectations of the autonomy of this technology. And I feel like, not to be all like what's the, one doesn't want to be a canary in a coal mine because success to them is death, but like kind of tracking the trend. There's a lot of people who are like a little skeptical about AI stuff now being so fantastic. A lot of tech people, but like I think instead what you can use it for when you're doing D&D stuff is more for like augmenting what you're doing. Like you don't want to hand control over to it and let it narrate stuff, because then you're just going to chase eerie lights in the forest forever, right? Like that's the other thing that it's not very good at, is like being decisive, right? Like it never really like gets to a moment of a conclusion. Like it's always kind of like waiting for you to like tell it what to do next. So anyways, what I realized recently, to wind up my long reply to your answer there, is like, I think if you you tell it like what you want to happen, and you just rely on it to come up to explain it and maybe come up with some other options, right? It's almost like a use case that works really well in just general is like, summarize this email for me, or take what I would like this email to look like and write it for me. And so you can kind of think how you can apply that same thing to like playing games and things like that. And anyhow, I think, well, one, it's fun, but I think it's also worth contemplating these kind of things because it helps me think about like, so if I was going to use like generative AI to help plan like, the logistics of a cardboard manufacturing company, what would it actually be capable of? Like, can it be decisive, or is it just going to be like, you should ship boxes to people who want to buy them? And that's going to be my whole AI initiative.
Well, there's a whole art. I guess the answer to your question comes down in how you phrase the question to AI. There's now like this whole new art about how to actually ask questions of AI to get what you're looking for, and people putting cheat sheets out there and things of that nature.
Yeah. I mean, that is also like, speaking of building your own platform, I hadn't thought of this. That might be the DIY of doing generative AI, is you just spend way too much time doing prompt engineering. And that's like, that definitely, and it is fun, but that's definitely what I, over the past year, reflecting on it, spent way too much time doing. And I don't know. And to what I think I've learned is that the less prompting you do, kind of sort of the better. Like you can almost like give it too much instruction and it just gets a little bonkers.
I keep going back to, has nobody seen the Terminator movies?
Hey, one day I think it'll be fine. But I as I've been, on the topic of AI, just as these new OSS Foundation models keep getting released, like the chattiness factor seems to be very interesting. Or like you take like a some like Lacuna 2, which is very distinct and like what's the answer? This is the answer. You look at like a Llama 3. Llama 3 is like, they'll give you the answer, they'll give you 3 paragraphs. It definitely didn't want about it either hallucinating or or trying to make some kind of connection between other data it had about your answer too. So yeah, maybe as these models get more data and more smart, they become actually dumber because they can't like process all the information. I don't know. We'll see.
And again, we'll bring up what we brought up on the first episode, right? You got to be careful about the training. We all remember what happened when Microsoft put its chatbot out there to
get no
trained.
Yes, yeah.
What was it like 2 or 3 hours? It just became a racist asshole.
yeah
So,
that was not a good time for them.
Yep.
Yeah, that was before the Gen AI boom too, which is
Yep.
All
right.
Anywho, yeah.
Yep. Always good to have you on, Cote. We're going to put
Yes.
some links into your newsletter. We're going to put some links in for your LinkedIn, get people pointed your way. For our audience, hey, we had great conversation today. I really appreciate everybody getting in on the chat. Remember to hit the subscribe button. Remember to like us. That's how you get notified of when these new things come up. And, we appreciate everybody out there that's listening in, and appreciate you, Cote, for joining us today.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
All right.
We will see y'all next time. 3,
CF bye.
2, 1.
Nope.
CF bye. Oh.
I missed you. That was my fault.
All right.
All right, everybody have a great day.
All right, I'll see you.